when it's in March. You learn a little bit more about the church. Man, I'm making a mess here. I'm going to put the lid on there. So we tried it. When we got married, because of credit cards and because of car payments, we immediately were in debt about $13,000. Most people are like, yeah, I understand. I'm still in debt $13,000. I get it. We went through our first probably year and a half of marriage, just making minimum payments, doing the bare minimum, not really doing anything extra, just living life. You know how it goes. We found out that there was more month than money in our budget. And at the end of every month, we were stressing, man, how are we going to make rent? How are we going to make it? How are we going to make this happen? And then all of a sudden, I was reading this verse, I was reading this passage, and I said, you know what? God says to test him, so we're going to test him. We're going to try this out. And so Stacy and I, we prayed over it, and we started tithing. Now, on the piece of paper on your budget sheet, you actually increase your expenses when you tithe. I mean, you do. And so we started tithing. And I said, God's got a funny way of doing math. Like he just does. When I add it up, it adds up to one thing. But when God adds it up to something totally different. And I'll tell you this, in a year, maybe just over a year, a couple months, maybe a year and a half, once we dedicated our finances to Jesus, and once we said, we're going to start tithing, we were out of debt in a year and a half. I mean, that's pretty awesome. And I'm not saying that because I made any kind of big paycheck, because believe me, I didn't. We were living month to month, and we just gave it to God, though. And we said, God, we trust you. We trust you, and he took care of us because he says, put me to the test. I will pour out blessings, and he did. And he does, and he will with you as well. God's plan to fulfill his dream is for his kids to honor God back with the tithe. Now, what is the tithe? The tithe is the first 10% of your income. That's what it is, and that's the starting point. Some people say, well, I give 4 or 5%, or I give, what I got in my pocket. Guess what? We've got to intentionally take steps to rise up. You don't accidentally fall forward. You take steps to reach New England for Christ. You've got to be intentional with your giving. You just do. And let me tell you this. If you're not giving 10%, then you're not giving God 100%. That's right. Woo-hoo-hoo. You can tweet that. If you're not giving 10%, you're not giving God 100%. Listen, God's called us to be better than where we're at right now. God's got a special plan for you. In Jeremiah, he says, I've got a plan for you. But in order for you to fulfill that plan, you've got to do something. You've got to stretch yourself. You've got to rise up. You've got to do something different than what you've ever done before in order to see people come to know Jesus. And in order for your life to be as fulfilled as what he has planned for you. Because God's got an amazing plan. And when we honor God, God honors back. He says, I will pour out a blessing. How awesome is that? I will pour you out a blessing. But understand this, it takes two things. Number one, it starts with that spirit of generosity we talked about. It takes a generous spirit. We have to pray intentionally for that generous spirit. Number two, we're only giving to God. Here's the other thing you got to realize, and this is really cool when you think about it. We're only giving to God what's his already. We don't take any of this with us. As much as we may like it, we're not taking any of it with us. We know that we're going one way or the other into eternity, either through undertaker or upper taker. And we're not carrying anything with us. It's all his to begin with. And it's pretty cool to think about, because he could have asked for 20%. He could have asked for 80%. He could have asked for 100%. But he didn't. He asked for 10%, because it's not about your money. He doesn't need your money. He wants your obedience. That's really what it boils down to. He wants your obedience. He wants you to step up and trust him. Because he said he's given you a promise. Test me in this. I will pour you out a blessing you can't even imagine. But we shouldn't give just so that we can get blessing. We want that spirit of generosity. But it's all his to begin with. Check this out in 1 Chronicles chapter 29. This verse is awesome. It says, "Oh, our God, we what? Thank you. We thank you. And we praise your glorious name." How many times do we just get on our knees and we just thank God for who he is? How many times do we get on our knees, or when we pray and all we do is we just talk to God and we just ask him for stuff? Oh, Lord, bless me with this. Lord, give me this. Pray for the health of this. I pray for money to do this. I pray for this job. I pray for that person. But how many times do we thank God for who he is and for what he's done? We thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I? Because once we start humbling ourselves in front of God, once we start thanking him and recognizing all the blessings that he's given us in life, we start to ask ourselves this question, but who am I? Who am I and who are my people that we could give anything to you? I am nothing without Christ. I am nothing standing in the presence of Jesus. And that's an amazing thing to think about. Everything comes from him. And he goes on to say this, everything we have has come from you. And we give you only. We give you what? Only. What you first gave us. It's all his anyway. He's given you so much. You can't even count the number of blessings. If you were to get a sheet of paper, 1, 2, 3, you couldn't even count how many blessings he pours out on you. Guess how much of it you deserve? You deserve none of it. I deserve none of it. We don't deserve anything, but God is gracious. And our God is a mighty God. And he is a life changer. And he is an eternity changer. And in your day-to-day life, he is a game changer. And he wants you to just obey him and be obedient to him. It's not about the money. You can't outgive God. Well, if I give this much, no. It's about obedience. He could have asked for all of it because it's all his anyway. He just wants to see you take a step in faith and trust him in your life. And then he's going to take that step and he's going to use it to pour out blessings not only on you, but use it to reach people for his name. You see, it all comes back to reaching people for Jesus. Rising up is about realizing that we are giving to God what he has first given to us. And when you think about it, what's really the risk? I mean, what's really the risk? He says he's going to take care of you. He's going to honor you if you honor him. So financially speaking, I'm losing 10% of my income. Oh man, Matt, that's crazy. Because 10% can be a lot. It is. But guess what? What's really the risk? God says, I will test me in this. What's really the risk? All of you know about the vision. You're bought into the vision. This is what we're talking about is a step. A step that you can take from agreeing with the vision. From instead of being the guy who comes in on Sunday and gets charged up, fired up, to Monday being somebody totally different. Because that happens. We get excited. Man, I'm ready to step out and step up. I want you to think about it. Because this is a big deal. I want you to take a step today. On the way out, you're actually going to receive a pamphlet. You're going to receive a pamphlet a little bit more about what we're talking about the tithe. Because it's that important. Because it's not about today, it's about every day. It's not about you, it's about so many other people in this community. We're here to reach Londondery. This campus is here to reach Londondery for Jesus. I mean, come on, we're not going to stop at this theater. We're not going to stop at one service. We want to get our own permanent location. How cool would that be if we were meeting in an actual church building at some point? I mean, come on, we are talking about God's got a plan for this campus, for this community, for our church. We're talking campus 5 and 6. And here at Londondery, let's be specific. We want to see 200 people sitting in these seats. I mean, we really do. We want to have multiple services. We want to have more than one service. We want to have our own location here around in this community. But it's going to take each one of us stepping up and rising up and doing something different than what we've done. Drawing that line in the concrete and saying, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to make any excuses for what's been or what my fear is. I'm not going to make excuses. Instead, I'm going to step forward. I'm going to rise up. I'm going to take a step. It's that important on what we do. Last verse. Last verse is found in Luke chapter 16. And it says this, use your worldly resources to what? Benefit others. And make friends. Then when your earthly possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home. And that's pretty cool to think about. We're not taking any of this with us. We can't take it with us, but we can send it forward. How many of you wish that you could go back and knowing what you know now, wish you knew it back then? Anybody? I said that completely wrong, but you get what I'm saying. I wish I could go back knowing what I know now. Boy, my life would be so much different. Anybody else feel that way? Yep. Guess what? You have that opportunity. You have that opportunity to invest in other people. You have that opportunity to make a difference and help people take steps where they may not even know steps are there. I'm helping you try to take a step today. because it's that important what we do. It's that important. And you're hearing me talk about giving 10%, but I want you to hear the heart of why. I want you to hear the heart of Granite. It's not to build a big church. It's not to be the biggest church in New England. It's not about us. It's about reaching people for Christ. And when you see that night of worship, and we're going to watch a video here in a little bit, and when you see night of worship, and you went there last week, and you got a glimpse, just a glimpse of the impact that what you're giving and what you're serving does, it's amazing to think if we all rose up, and if we all stood up, and we all started taking steps in our giving, it's amazing to think just how big this can get, how big this movement can get, how big Jesus is, because we can't outgive him, but he's got a plan for each one of us. He's got a plan for this church, and if we all rose up, we have no idea the blessings that he would pour out on everybody in this room and in our church. Oh man, I'm preaching. You get me fired up now. See, I got a handheld microphone today, and so it's a little bit different. You know, I'd be walking around, but I tell you what, I get excited. I do get passionate about what we're talking about because it matters. I used to be that guy that came to church. I told this story again the other day, and I'll tell it to you real quick. At my old church, again, I was telling you about my old church. I had a pastor get up one day, and he said, you know what? Today we're going to talk about giving. And if you're a guest with us here today, I apologize. I apologize because you're probably coming in here thinking that the church always talks about money. And you know what? This is the one time of year that we're going to preach on money. So I just ask that you come back next week and give us another chance. And that stuck with me for so long. It stuck with me so long that was the environment that I grew up in. That I grew up in an environment that said, you know what? The church shouldn't talk about money. That the church should apologize for talking about it. Then I started reading my Bible. Then I started getting into the Word of God. And let me tell you something. If Monday through Saturday you're not getting into the Word of God, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Because that's where it all comes down. You can hear me talk. You can hear other people talk. But guess what? It comes down to your personal relationship of getting into God's Word. What does the Bible say? And so I started reading my Bible, and I realized, you know what? The church needs to talk about this. It's difficult. It's not fun. It's not fun for me doing this, even though I like preaching. But this, talking about what we're talking about, it's not fun. But here's the thing. It's awesome because I know what we're talking about. We're not talking about money. We're talking about investing in people. We're talking about seeing people's lives forever change. We're talking about people coming to know Jesus. We're talking about people who can have a clean heart and a brand new start and step into a relationship and step into eternity with Jesus Christ. And we know that it takes every amount of resources to do that, from your time, your talent, and your treasure. And every now and then, we've got to talk about it. And we don't apologize for it because the dream of Jesus is bigger than Matt's dream. It's bigger than yours. Jesus has a bigger plan. And I'll tell you, if you're here today and you're thinking, man, these guys are nuts, that guy from Texas is crazy. He is. I am. I just came because somebody dared me to. Or, you know, somebody's buying me lunch after this. I'm going over to somebody's house to watch the Super Bowl, go Broncos, and had to throw that in there. But listen, you may be thinking, man, it's crazy. And it is. We are. We're nuts. We like to have a lot of fun. But I'm glad you came. And today I'm hoping that you realized a little bit about the heart of our church. I'm hoping that you're walking away today thinking, man, I can do something else. I can take a step. But the first step that you got to realize is you've got to be in a relationship with Christ first. We talked about it at the beginning. You can show others. You can't show others unless you know firsthand. Because every single one of us aren't perfect. Every single one of us falls short. And every single one of us want to get to God. We want that eternal happiness. We want that eternal security to be in a relationship with Christ, to know that when our last breath on earth, we want our very next breath to be in heaven. Intrinsically, we believe that. And we want that. But there's this big problem. There's this big gaping cavern called sin. And that's what separates us. And we try to earn our way to it. We try philosophy. We try reading. We try going to church. We try doing all these things. We try all these different religions. But none of that gets you to heaven. None of that's going to get you into a personal relationship with Christ. Because that's where it all starts. It all starts with the relationship with Christ. You don't have to do anything to get to him. He's already done everything for you. John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world, he gave. He gave. You didn't have to do anything for it. It's a gift. He gave his son so that anybody